had a chance to win it. Late caution foiled his chance, or he would be grabbing the broom that Kyle Busch has used here twice, sweeping the weekend.
And that's what he's after. He wants one of those bad. He's tried at Homestead, tried here, oh so close.
The goal today was to win one for John. In the memory of John Edwards, Kyle Larson dominates and wins Bristol and parks it against the wall in front of his crew, who come out to pit wall to meet him.
In August 2025, something wild happened in NASCAR. The most famous driver ever, Richard Petty, said something on live TV that shocked everyone. People couldn't believe what they heard. It wasn't a rumor, it was real, and it came straight from the king himself. What he said about Kyle Larson is now spreading fast, and nobody can stop talking about it. So what did Petty say that has everyone talking? During a recent episode of the Petty Race Recap Show, a fan asked the ultimate question: how would Kyle Larson stack up against the old school drivers from Petty's era? You know, those tough-as-nails racers from the 60s and 70s who drove cars that were basically death traps compared to today's machines. Petty didn't hesitate. He looked straight into that camera and said something that sent shockwaves through the NASCAR community. But before we get to the details, let's talk about why this matters so much. Kyle Larson is having another incredible year. The Hendrick Motorsports driver has already grabbed 3 wins in 2025 and sits at the top of the points standings. At just 32 years old, he's got 30 Career Cup Series wins and a championship under his belt. The guy can wheel anything with 4 wheels, from dirt cars to Indy cars to stock cars. But here's the thing about Richard Petty. The man doesn't hand out compliments like candy at Halloween. When the king speaks about talent, people listen. We are talking about a guy who won 200 races, captured 7 championships, and dominated NASCAR for decades. His 1967 season alone saw him win 27 races, including 10 straight victories. That's a record that will probably never be touched. So when this 87-year-old legend was asked about Larson fitting in with the old-school crowd, his answer was crystal clear. Petty said, "If you put him back in our crowd, and he grew up in that environment, then he would probably fit in pretty good." Him or Kyle Busch, you know, but the majority of them wouldn't fit into that category. Let that sink in for a moment. Out of all the current NASCAR drivers, Petty picked just 2 who could hang with his generation: Kyle Larson and Kyle Busch. That's it. Nobody else made the cut. But Petty wasn't done. He went on to explain why direct comparisons between eras are nearly impossible. People don't understand. There's no way to compare what happened 20 years ago to what happened today from the driver's standpoint. The cars are completely different. All these guys grew up under different circumstances.
You know, people don't understand. There's no way to compare what happened 20 years ago to what happened today from the driver's standpoint. The cars are completely different. All these guys grew up under different circumstances.
And he's absolutely right. The cars from Petty's era were monsters. No power steering, no fancy safety equipment, and engines that could kill you if you made one wrong move. Today's next-gen cars are engineering marvels with every safety feature you can imagine. This isn't the first time Petty has praised Larson either. Last year, he appeared on another show and called Larson one of the top 0.001% of great race car drivers in history.
Now, you know, if you put him back in our crowd and he grew up in that environment, then he would probably fit in pretty good.
Think about that percentage. We are talking about a handful of drivers out of thousands who have ever strapped into a race car. Petty even compared Larson to Tim Richmond, who he considers the most naturally talented driver he ever saw. Richmond could jump into anything and make it fast. Indy cars, sprint cars, stock cars, it didn't matter. And now Petty is putting Larson in that same category. But here's where it gets really interesting. Petty knows what it's like to be the guy everyone else is chasing. Back in his day, he was the problem. Other drivers went to bed thinking about how to beat Richard Petty. Now he sees Larson in that same role. Just look at what happened at Kansas Speedway recently. Larson led 221 out of 267 laps, swept both stages, and made it look easy. Petty broke down the performance perfectly. He said Larson was incredible on fresh tires, pulling away by a quarter-second lap after lap. But even when his tires started to fade after 40 or 50 laps, he was smart enough to manage his lead. The crazy part? Petty and his co-host Dale Inman were almost complaining about how dominant Larson was. They said if you took Larson out of the equation, it would have been an incredible race with 20 cars battling for the win. Instead, Larson just checked out and cruised to victory. Sound familiar? That's exactly what people used to say about Petty during his dominant years. In 1967, he won 27 races out of 48 starts. Fans probably got tired of seeing the same blue Plymouth in victory lane every week. The difference was, Petty had David Pearson to keep him honest. The Silver Fox won 105 races and could match Petty's pace when it mattered. Their battles were legendary, and Pearson's calculated approach often got the better of the king in the biggest moments. Today, Petty sees Christopher Bell as the guy who might fill that Pearson role against Larson. Bell started this season with 3 straight wins before Josh Berry broke the streak at Las Vegas. But Larson bounced back with that Homestead victory, showing he's not going away anytime soon. Speaking of that Homestead win, it perfectly showed why Petty is so high on Larson. The guy started 14th and had to fight for every position. His car wasn't even the fastest that day. Ryan Blaney looked like the man to beat until his engine let go, but Larson did what champions do. He managed his equipment, stayed patient, and struck when the opportunity came. Kevin Harvick noticed the same thing. On his podcast, Harvick said it was dangerous for the rest of the field to see Larson win a race where his car wasn't dominant. That's the mark of a true champion, winning on days when you don't have the best stuff. Even Denny Hamlin, who's not exactly known for handing out praise, had to tip his cap to Larson's driving style. Hamlin pointed out how Larson approaches corners differently than everyone else, carrying more speed and hitting the throttle earlier. It's those little advantages that separate the good drivers from the great ones. But here's what makes Petty's endorsement even more powerful. The NASCAR landscape today is incredibly deep with talent. In the past 41 Cup Series races, we've seen 19 different winners. Out of the 36 drivers in the current field, 25 of them have won at least one Cup Series race. Think about that for a second. In 75 years of NASCAR history, only 205 drivers have ever won a Cup Series race, and 25 of them are racing right now. That's 12% of all NASCAR winners competing at the same time. Petty recognizes this talent depth too. During a recent appearance, he said, "I don't see any riders. I see racers, top to bottom. As a racer, that's all you can ask for." Coming from a guy who's seen every era of NASCAR, that's a pretty strong statement about today's competition level. Yet even in this incredibly talented field, Larson continues to rise above. He's already proven himself across multiple racing disciplines. Before NASCAR, he was tearing up dirt tracks across the country. He won the Knoxville Nationals, the Chili Bowl, and even set sprint car track records. USAC officials gave him the nickname Young Money because of his natural talent. He's also conquered road racing, winning the 24 Hours of Daytona in 2015. And now he's even dabbling in IndyCar with Arrow McLaren. Very few drivers in history have shown that kind of versatility across different racing disciplines.